Recording.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody. I guess should I give a little intro here?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Elliot Racine. I'm here with my dear friend Mans, and we're this video that you're about to see is still part of our cross interview series, but this one is a little different than the other ones we've done so far. Um, So this video is going to be about uh, the new album I'm recording and why it's been taking me so long to actually start recording it. Uh, for those of you who don't know, the other interviews that we've done have mostly been about either my songs if Mans is interviewing me or Mans's poetry if I'm interviewing them. But this video is going to be a little different. And as far as where this video is going to where you're going to be able to see this video, that's going to be a little different too. For those of you who want to see the interviews of me about my songs from my last album, Curiosity, those are available to my paid Patreon members at all paid levels. So if you want to see those, go ahead and become a paid member, a paid subscriber on patreon.com/ Elliot Racine, and you'll see them there. This video, I'm going to just release this out into the world at large. So this is going to be on, it's going to be for paid and non-paid members on patreon.com/ Elliot Racine. It's going to be on my social media stuff and all that. So doing something a little different this time around, but next month we'll get back to the usual program. And but of course, if you want to see the interviews that I do with Mans about their poetry, you're going to have to hit their Patreon. um, and I guess that intro does it for me. How about you, Mans? Anything you want to add to that? Or you want to just jump in? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm going to be asking you questions about your next or your upcoming album that you're currently working on.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I can just start right ahead.
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. Okay, cool. So, first question is what is I guess this you can answer this kind of vaguely, but like what is like your like muse or inspiration for this new album? I know each song is probably different, but I guess it's like more of a general broad question for this one.
Okay, that's a super good question. Oh, real quick before I answer that, I also need to let everybody know if you hear construction noises, there's construction going on next door. So there's that. But anyways, getting back to the task at hand. Yeah. Well, as is the case with all music I ever make, there's so many things inspiring me to make it. When it comes down to it, my inspiration for every all music I make is everything there ever was, is now, and ever will be. But um, with this album, um, musically, there's a lot of it is coming from, so a lot of my favorite music to listen to is the various forms of what I guess you might call traditional or folkloric music from all of the different human cultures from all around the world. I'm just so fascinated with all of the different rhythms we've figured out how to make, all of the different instruments we've figured out how to make, all of the different sounds we've figured out how to make. And I love so much of that music so much. And uh, the music on this album is going to really reflect that side of me, you know, very very prominently. Of course, because I also, come from the worlds of like funk and hip hop and jazz and rock and all that kind of stuff. I mean, all of that stuff is going to be in there. Like that's not going anywhere. But as far as, kind of like the feel of the album, um, you know, I I really want this album to feel like something that could be 1,000 years old or 5 seconds old at the same time.
Oh yeah. Ooh, I love that. Timeless. Timeless shit.
Yeah.
Excited. Okay. Um, all right. So next question is, so I kind of wanted to clarify like the timeline for like each individual album or like the stages or seasons of life that kind of define like the first your album your previous album Curiosity from like this album. If there was like a I don't know if there's like I don't know that's a really hard question I know, but it's like I was if there is an answer for that, if there's like a timeline thing that is like this separates Curiosity's energy from this new album.
Like in certain ways, it's curiosity itself.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So, curiosity for me was, I had recorded a handful of albums, on my own and in collaboration with other people. Um, Before I recorded Curiosity, um, but Curiosity was like, I mean, right, if you go to my website right now, it's the only album I have up there, even though, there's some other stuff out in the world. But Curiosity was kind of this this point for me where so many pieces of my musical world came together. I think I've I'm pretty sure we've talked in at least one of the interviews about the songs from Curiosity about um, how when I was oh yeah, it was in the interview that we did about the song Far and Away. So, I talked about, and I'm hoping that like bringing this up is going to persuade, a couple folks to become paid subscribers at patreon.com/Elliot Racine so they can see this interview that I'm referencing. But, you know, when I was writing the songs for Curiosity, I had that shift that I talked about in that interview where I went from thinking of lyric writing as kind of like something that was kind of like there to back up the instrumental composition to being something that was on the same level of it. And if you become a paid subscriber on patreon.com/Elliot Racine and watch the interview about Far Away, you'll hear all the details about that. But um yeah, so yeah, around the time that I recorded Curiosity, that's when kind of all the pieces came together. It's like all the instrumental composition that had been there, and then the lyric writing came together. And um, yeah, Curiosity itself is kind of like this demarcation point in my musical life. I would say that one piece that is has come together for this album that I'm working on now that I don't think had really fully gotten there when I recorded Curiosity is vocal melodies. Um, I mean, obviously all of the songs on Curiosity, except for the spoken word piece, A Morning in October. All of those songs, they all have a vocal melody, and um, I mean, I've every once in a while, I someone gives me some compliment about how catchy the vocal melodies are, or whatever. But when I was writing those vocal melodies on Curiosity, I I still wasn't thinking of the vocal melody as, kind of being in the same place as, the lyrics or the instrumental composition. But in the years since, I've started to that piece has finally come in there for me. And so on this album, it's going to have all of the pieces that came together on Curiosity, but plus this other piece of this, for lack of a better way to say it, kind of like attention or focus on the vocal melodies.
Oh yeah. That's awesome. I'm so excited. So beautiful. Hell yeah. Oh, it's cool. We were talking a little bit about how it's like its own instrument and like you discovering that more thoroughly. And yeah, it's really cool just to like talk about. But yeah, hell yeah, I'm excited. Cool. Hell yeah. All right. So next question is how long did it take you to create Curiosity? Like kind of approximately. I don't know if that's like an important question, but I was just kind of curious.
I mean, well, it's a very important question to me because it took me
Oh,
3.5 years to
oh hell yeah.
record Curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took me 3.5 years to record Curiosity. And so, I released Curiosity in 2016, 9 years ago at this point. And honestly, the album I'm working on now, I, I started working on it the minute I, I released Curiosity. But the thing is, and I'm guessing you probably probably at least some of your questions are about this, is it's like what why, if I've been working on this album in one way or another for 9 years, it's like why haven't I actually gone into the studio and laid any tracks down yet? And I guess I could just like start going off about that, but I feel like you probably have at least a couple questions about it, and we're
Yeah.
probably going to be in better hands, so to speak, to let you kind of lead that with whatever questions you have about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought of just starting kind of with that question because it's like I work on poetry and it's like I have some poems in a book that I'm written that is like I wrote those poems when I was like 15, but I still want to put that in the book that I'm doing. So it's like technically, if you think about it, I've been working on this book for like 15 years or something. And I feel like some people who don't do a lot of art, which tends to be the people who enjoy these kinds of things, like the audience, it's like they don't really do the art, but they're interested in how artists, what the artist process kind of is. And so I wanted to ask that question so that people could kind of understand that it's like it took you 3 years to write Curiosity. Yeah, like if I don't know, it's like um I some art you can rush, but I don't think that's your style, especially for this. And like it's like just like letting the art kind of come and like not rushing it and letting it take its time and having it kind of come out as it comes out, like whenever it comes out is like just an interesting process that I've had to kind of learn the balance of in my process. So I thought that would be a important thing maybe for you to like discuss for people who are like, oh, why haven't like I want more Elliot music. Why is it taking so long? But it's like you can't really rush it. Like if you tried to rush it, it would come out differently. So it's a different product or uh yeah, like process our end result entirely. So it's just like I know some people know that, but I was just like, yeah, like you worked on that last album for like 3 years. So it's like, yeah, like whatever like you need to do to um create this next album like as it comes out from you is like, yeah, like I'm excited and take your time. But people be patient. I'm being patient too. um, but yeah, so you've been working on this album and you've been talking about it for years, but you still have not gone into the studio for it yet. What are some of the reasons for that? Okay, yeah, so I just bounced the question to you.
All right. So, I mean, yeah, there are several reasons. Um, One of the reasons that, and it's like it's like where do you start, kind of. But I think the place I want to start with that is that, and this is like super, I guess you could say, kind of. I don't know. I feel like this is juicy. This is interesting. And psychologically interesting. So one of the reasons it's taking me so long to actually start tracking this album is loneliness, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So, you know, so much of my music I do in one way or another by myself. Um, and why that is a whole field of discussion in and of itself. The kind of the quick overview is um, I make music the way I want to. My music doesn't really sound like a whole lot of other music out there. It doesn't really fit neatly into any particular category. And I mean, making music is a challenge for anybody, no matter what. Um, and no matter what you're doing in music, I have all the respect in the world for you. And so when I say what I'm about to say, I'm not trying to imply anything otherwise. But you know, making music is incredibly hard no matter what. But when you don't have a place that's already pre-made to fit into as a creator of music, it adds another layer of challenge. So, for example, like being an indie rock musician, that's one of the hardest things that you could possibly do. Being an indie rock musician, making a living from playing indie rock, like making a life from it. That's one of the hardest things any human being could possibly do. But the thing is, as hard as it is, as like almost impossible as it is to do in certain ways, there's a certain kind of infrastructure that's there for it. Like, if you want to be an indie rock musician or a hip hop musician or a jazz musician or whatever, like that infrastructure, there's the infrastructure of the indie rock world there for you. There's the infrastructure of the hip hop world there for you. There's the infrastructure of the jazz world there for you. Doesn't mean your life is going to be easy. You're going to have to work really hard, harder than probably anybody you know. And so many people are not going to understand how hard you're working, and they're just not going to get it, and like it's going to cause all sorts of issues between you and the world around you. But like, you just have that one little layer that's already there for you that I don't have. And
Yeah.
so I'm sure, I don't want to stray too far from the task at hand, but I'm sure, for the folks watching, it's probably easy enough to extrapolate and figure out, understand why it would be the case that someone who makes music I do makes so much of their music alone in one way or another, so much of the time. Um, so there's that, and then also, and you know what is the things that come along with that infrastructure not being there are, it's harder for me to find. I mean, it's hard once again for every musician. It's no matter who you are, it's it's hard. It's really hard to find, like the right people to play with, or like the right people to mix your music, the right people to record your music. Like that's incredibly hard no matter who you are. But, for someone like me who doesn't have the same infrastructure that someone who's working in a more, already defined genre has, doing stuff like finding the right, musicians to play with, to, have in my band, or like to, track with or whatever, like, stuff, kind of that kind of like just mechanical. So it's harder even to find those people. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons why a lot of my music making happens alone. And when I recorded, and a lot of times too, that translates into to money stuff. It's like, when you're doing something, so alone so much, it's like, you don't always have like a team around you. And I mean, probably nobody needs me to explain like why that can mean that there's potentially less money available to do a lot of things um, that require money to be done. Um, so yeah, so there's a lot of alone time in my music. And when I was recording Curiosity, I what I did was I I recorded it, as much of it myself, at home in my home studio as I felt like I could. I'm not a sound engineer at all, so all of everything I know about recording and sound engineering is all self-taught, and I haven't ever really, gone in depth on any. I'm a musician and a creator and performer of music, not an engineer of music. And so I felt like for the tracks on Curiosity that are going to be up front, which it for me were, the lead vocals, of course, but for me also the bass, because the bass is my main instrument, so the bass is kind of the lead in my music. um I went into, professional, or for a few of the songs, like semi-professional studios to track that upfront stuff. But for all of the other tracks, all of the more backing tracks, I recorded all of that myself in in my home studio. And it was a doing all of that recording myself. It was a magical process. It was a wonderful process. It was an amazing process. But when it came after Curiosity was released, and I started thinking about recording this album that I'm working on now, I didn't want to do it again. Like I didn't want to spend all of that time alone again. And it's like thinking about it, it's like, well, how do you record in a way where you're not alone? And it's like, don't track it yourself. I mean, that's the answer I was able to come up with, at least. It's like, don't track it yourself. Like, go into a studio, have an engineer track it. It's going to sound better anyways. So, it took me a long time to get to that point where I was like, okay, this time around for this album, every track is going to be tracked in Hyde Street Studios by a professional engineer, by David Sines. He's my guy. Um, that's how I'm going to deal with, the loneliness of tracking my music myself. And that's also how I'm going to get a better sound too. Um, recording it in a place where the room is literally set up to sound bad, sound as best as it possibly can, which my home studio is not. I don't even know how to do that. Uh, on top quality equipment, by someone who records music all day, every day versus like performs and composes and like hits the record button occasionally. It's totally different experience. Um, but then
Mhm.
of course th that sorry, I'm kind of just like going off for a while, but there's a lot here. But and so it's like great that I mean it took me a couple years to get that point where I was like, okay, I'm fine with doing that. Not even just fine with doing that, but that's what I want to do and I'm excited about doing that. But of course, that brought up money issues because it costs money to record in a place like Hyde Street. And so that brought up the question, well, like, how am I gonna afford that? How am I gonna, like, I could potentially, you know, be in this studio for, many hours. And it's like, how is someone like me going to afford something like that? And all this stuff happened over years and took years to figure out. So at this point I'm kind of fuzzy on the exact timelines, but I at a certain point in there I started watching these reptile videos on YouTube and got into these YouTube channels where these people talk about reptiles, and I realized, oh, they're all using Patreon to fund what they do. And I realized, like, oh, this is something that I could do. But then it was like, okay, well, now I need to figure out, now I need to get a Patreon up and running. And now I need to, oh, and also somewhere in there is this thing about, before I figured out Patreon, just thinking about crowdfunding in general. And there was like this period where there's this GoFundMe up, and I like it. Getting all these crowdfunding things up and running takes all this time and thought and energy, um and so between like figuring out how to deal with how to make the process this time around not as lonely as it was in Curiosity, and like learning like how to do crowdfunding and like getting it all up and running and dealing with it and finding my rhythms with it and all that. and and then also this is a whole topic in and of itself, but like choosing the songs that are going to go on this new album, that I kind of had to re redo the way I'm I'm choosing songs to go on albums from this point forward. And um just let me know if you want to jump in and say anything at any point. I'm like, there's kind of a
I
lot
feel like,
to explain here.
yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like if you could clarify on like what is it that you're like, are you purposefully not putting something in this album, or are you purposefully putting something specific for the songs that you're picking in this album?
So yeah, so I used to so I've kind of gone through these like different phases with how I choose songs for albums. So, before Curiosity, I I wanted like an even mix of vocal and instrumental tracks. And I really kind of had this approach, like when I'm choosing the songs to go on an album, it's coming from a lot of my choices are coming from a lot of different places, but one of the places they're coming from is I want to show people what I can do. I want to show people like what kind of writing, what kind of playing, what kind of blah 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 I can do. And I and but then by the time I recorded Curiosity, I started to feel like, well, that strict idea of alternating vocal and instrumental tracks, like that doesn't really, I love an album that just feels very cohesive and it feels like the whole thing is kind of like one big experience um and it's like when I would, choose these alternating vocal and instrumental tracks and like, choose these songs that were showcasing whatever skill I had or knowledge I had. I was choosing things that to me felt like they went together, but there's a difference between just a bunch of stuff that goes together and like things that like at least to me kind of feel like they're part of the same journey, so to speak. And so by the time I recorded Curiosity, I had gotten to this place where I felt like, oh, you know, I don't want to do that alternating vocal and instrumental tracks, like obviously songwriting is a big thing on this album. I want to think of this as mostly a vocal album, but put a few instrumental tracks on it here and there to kind of like let it breathe, so to speak.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and then, and I was still thinking when I first started working on the album I'm working on now, which is like the second Curiosity was released, I was still thinking of picking the tracks, this same way I did on Curiosity. Um, but I still kind of had that motive. I had this motive through Curiosity of wanting to, you know, showcase certain things that I can do or whatever. And um, I still had that motive when I was initially picking out songs for this album and I started picking out songs and some of them I would think about like what kind of work am I going to have to do to record this, and it would just be totally exciting, just like sunshine and rainbows and fawns jumping all over inside my head. But some of them it would be like, well, this would be cool, on kind of like a scientific level, but I didn't have that feeling of like sunshine and rainbows and fawns jumping around inside my head and in my heart when I thought about what I would need to do to record this track. And like for a few years, I kind of tried to like, push through it and find the excitement. But at a certain point, I realized, it's like, I have some tracks that I'm literally excited to record and some tracks that I'm literally not excited to. And for the ones that I'm not excited to record, it's like maybe I'm not excited. Maybe it's just the case that I'm not excited to record them now. Like maybe it's a song for another album another time. Or, maybe it's like maybe I'm just not excited about it at all. It's maybe some songs it's like, okay, maybe yeah, the idea sounds good on paper, but as far as actually like recording it and performing it, maybe it's something that's better to just remain hypothetical. So I had to go through that whole process of figuring out like what like I don't know how else to say it, but what do I actually want to record?
yeah.
And all those things, the figuring out the loneliness, figuring out the money, figuring out the song list, the track list, like all that stuff, it's taken like so much time and so much energy to figure out that it's like here I am 9 years later and I I'm one song's worth of lyrics away from finally booking some sessions in a studio.
Oh,
Sorry, I just
that's
talked for a long
great.
time, but like I had a lot to get
Very
out.
in your interview talk. No, just kidding. Yeah, don't apologize. Hell yeah, that's rad. Okay, so it's like you're like ready. You're not ready, but like you have it ready. So then when you get to the studio, you're not like, you know what you're going to record. You're going to save time and it's like you're ready to go. And then it's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. I felt like you were not that done, but you seem more along the more closer to the finish line for this than I previously imagined. So that, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like, yeah, all those things are like definitely things that like lots of people can relate to, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm literally like walking dogs right now trying to make my tattoo career happen. But it's like, yeah, like that's all part of like the process. And yeah, hell yeah. I'm just really excited. But yeah, holy shit. All right.
Also, being at a point where I'm almost ready is like that's so the way I got to this point where I'm almost ready to actually start recording is, it's like over these past 9 years, I mean, I've been working on the album in one way or another over the past 9 years. Sometimes that's meant like, actually sitting down, notating stuff. At this point, I have a handful of songs, notated. Whether it's sitting down, actually notating stuff, or whether it's like writing words, composing instrumental stuff, or whether it's like just like figuring out how to choose the songs, or it's like in one way or another, I've been working on this album continuously over the last 9 years. It's not like I just haven't been working on it. It's like maybe there's been times where I've been working on it more actively, maybe times when I've been working on it less actively, maybe even subconsciously.